Open with a slow, gentle fade-in of ambient, very subtle natural sound. A distant bird, a faint breeze. Hold for 10 seconds, then let it fade to complete clean silence for 5 seconds. A calm, engaging voice begins. Voice. Let's begin with a question. What did you just hear? In those few seconds of pure quiet, perhaps your own heartbeat, the faint hum of a device you'd tuned out, the rustle of your own clothes, or maybe a sudden loud thought. This is awkward. Is this working? What am I supposed to be hearing? That reaction is the first lesson. Because we so rarely encounter true silence, we've forgotten what it is. We think of silence as an absence, as nothing, as the blank space between the notes. But what if silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of a profound space for listening? Welcome to a journey into the quiet. This is When Silence Speaks. I want you to imagine noise for a moment. Not just sound, but noise. The chaotic orchestra of our modern lives. The ping of notifications, the roar of traffic, the background buzz of screens, the constant soundtrack of music and podcasts filling every spare second, the chatter in our own minds, the to-do lists, the anxieties, the rehearsed conversations. We live in a world that is afraid of silence. We treat it like a vacuum that must be filled immediately, lest we be alone with ourselves. But in doing so, we have conflated silence with emptiness. And in that conflation, we have lost a fundamental language. So let's dissect this. Let's look at the anatomy of true silence. First, there is external silence. This is the pursuit of a reduction in audible noise. It's turning off the car radio on a long drive. It's sitting in a park early in the morning. It's putting your phone in another room. It's a conscious act of subtraction. It's difficult to achieve, but it's just the first, outer layer. It's the clearing of the stage. Then there is internal silence. This is the quieting of the inner noise, the mental static, the worry about tomorrow, the reliving of yesterday, the constant commentary. This is much harder. You can be in a soundproof room and still have a carnival roaring between your ears. Achieving internal silence is not about stopping thoughts. That's impossible. It's about changing your relationship to them. It's about letting the thoughts pass by like clouds in a vast, still sky, without chasing after each one. It's the settling of the dust within. When external and internal silence begin to align, even for a moment, we arrive at the third layer, deep silence. This is not a void. This is a presence. This is the silence that speaks. Philosophers and mystics across time have tried to name this. They've called it the ground of being, the womb of creation, the canvas upon which all experience is painted. In deep silence, you are not just not hearing. You are in a state of radical, receptive listening. Think of it this way. When you look at a powerful painting, the space around the figures, the negative space, isn't just blank. It's essential. It defines the form. It gives the eye a place to rest. It holds the meaning. Deep silence is that negative space for the soul. It's the container that holds our experiences, our emotions, our very sense of self. In our noise-saturated world, we have become brilliant at speaking, at broadcasting, at expressing. But we have atrophied in our ability to listen, and most especially, to listen to silence. We've forgotten that silence has a texture. It can be heavy and oppressive, like in a tense room after a harsh word. It can be light and expansive, like on a mountain peak at dawn. It can be intimate and comforting, like sitting with a loved one where no words are needed. It can be anticipatory, like the breath a singer takes before the first note. This texture, it communicates. It tells us things that words cannot. A rushed silence is different from a peaceful one. A shared silence is different from a lonely one. When we start to listen to it, rather than just enduring it or fleeing from it, we begin to receive its intelligence. The 20th century composer John Cage famously wrote a piece called 433, where the performer sits at a piano and plays nothing for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. The music becomes the ambient sounds of the concert hall, the coughing, the shifting in seats, the distant street noise. The piece wasn't a joke. It was a profound statement. It framed silence, inviting the audience to listen to what was always there. It revealed that there is no such thing as true acoustic silence. But there is a profound shift that happens when we intentionally listen into the space we normally ignore. That's our starting point. Before we can hear what silence has to say about ourselves, our relationships, our world, we must first understand what it is. We must move from seeing it as an empty pause to recognizing it as a field of potential, a sacred space for reception. So, as we move forward, I invite you to carry this new anatomy. When you find a moment of quiet today, whether you create it by closing a door or you simply stumble upon it in between tasks, don't rush to fill it. Step into it. Ask yourself, what is the texture of this silence? Is it external only, or is my inner world beginning to settle too? What can I hear in this space that I couldn't hear before? Because in this space, this deep silence, everything that truly matters has room to make itself known. Music begins to fade in subtly, a single, sustained, gentle note. Voice. In our next exploration, we will venture inward. We will listen to the most important conversation you will ever have, the one happening within the quiet of your own being. We'll explore the inner symphony, open with the same subtle ambient sound from point one, but this time underneath it. A very faint, beautiful and complex tapestry of internal sounds is woven in, a soft heartbeat, a fleeting whisper of a thought, a gentle sigh. These sounds are almost subliminal. Hold for 5 seconds, then fade ambient sound, leaving only the delicate internal sounds for another 5 seconds before they too fade to pure silence. The calm voice returns. Voice. Listen. Closer now. Beyond the quiet of the room lies the universe of you. In our last moment together, we cleared the stage. We defined silence not as an empty void, but as a sacred, listening space. Now, I invite you to step into the most intimate concert hall you will ever know, the sanctuary of your own awareness. When the world's noise recedes, a different performance begins. This is not a solo, but a symphony, sometimes harmonious, sometimes discordant, always profoundly revealing. This is the inner symphony. Imagine your mind, in its usual state, as a cluttered, bustling control room. Screens are flashing with worries. A loudspeaker is blaring the day's agenda. Memos of past conversations are flying everywhere. It's efficient, perhaps, but it's deafening. Now, imagine beginning to cultivate that internal silence we spoke of. It's as if you gently turn down the master volume on that control room. One by one, the screens dim, the loudspeaker's crackle softens, and in that new, spacious quiet, you start to hear the individual instruments that were always playing, drowned out by the cacophony. The first violin, often the most insistent, is the narrative of thought. This is the running commentary. I need to send that email. What did they mean by that text? I'm not good enough at this. In noise, these thoughts feel like absolute truths, urgent commands. But in silence, observed from a slight distance, their character changes. You begin to hear their tone. Is it anxious? Is it scornful? Is it weary? You notice their repetitive melodies, the same worry playing on a loop, the same old story being retold. Silence doesn't stop the music, but it gives you a seat in the audience, allowing you to listen to the composition of your own mind without being swept onto the stage. Then, beneath that, you might hear the deeper, more resonant cello, the voice of intuition. This is the knowing without knowing why, the gut feeling, the quiet yes or the firm no that arises from a place deeper than logic. In our noisy lives, this instrument is almost inaudible. We override it with pros and cons lists, with others' opinions, with frantic doing. But in silence, its subtle, solid note becomes clearer. It's the feeling that arrives in the space between thoughts. It's not argued, it's simply presented. It's the idea that floats up during a shower, the solution that appears when you stop straining for it. Listening to this instrument is the art of trusting the wisdom that speaks in whispers. And what of the haunting, echoing flute of memory and emotion? Silence has a peculiar relationship with time. Without the anchor of present noise, the past can drift forward. A scent on the air, a quality of light, and suddenly a melody from years ago is playing, not just as a mental image, but as a full-bodied experience. A long-forgotten joy, a pang of unresolved sorrow. In the quiet, we don't just remember, we re-feel. This can be challenging. We often keep noise to wall off these echoes. But in the safe container of intentional silence, listening to these old tunes can be a profound act of integration. It's allowing an old part of yourself to finally be heard, and perhaps to find peace. Then there is the most profound instrument of all, the one that gives the symphony its moral gravity. The sound of conscience. Some call it the inner guide, the true self, the soul's voice. It is the quiet, unwavering note of truth about who you are and how you are living. It asks the uncomfortable questions in the quiet of the night. Are you being honest? Are you living in alignment with what you value most? Is this path wearing you away or building you up? This voice is not loud or punishing. It is persistent and clear, like a steady pulse. It is easily ignored in the din of distraction, but in silence, it becomes your most honest companion. To listen to it requires courage, for it often suggests the harder, truer path. But here is the beautiful, liberating secret of the inner symphony. You are not just the audience. You are also the conductor. The practice of listening internally is not about being a passive recipient of mental noise. It is about learning to curate the symphony. With the gentle focus cultivated in silence, you can learn to lower the volume on the frantic narrative violin. You can learn to lean in, with respectful attention, toward the cello of intuition. You can listen with compassion to the flute of memory, acknowledging its song without letting it hijack the entire orchestra. And you can choose to tune the entire ensemble to the steady pitch of conscience. This is the transformative power of listening to your inner world. It moves you from a state of being thought to observing thought, from being driven by unconscious noise to being guided by conscious clarity. The chaos doesn't necessarily vanish, but it loses its tyranny. You discover a silent, spacious center within yourself, the conductor's podium, from which you can hear all the parts without being identified with any single one. So how do we practice this? It begins with simple, brave acts of pausing. Several times a day, just stop. For 30 seconds. Close your eyes if you can. Let the goal be not emptiness, but listening. Ask, what is playing in my inner world right now? Don't judge it. Don't try to change the tune, just listen, with the curiosity of a music lover hearing a complex piece for the first time. Identify the instruments. Ah, there's anxiety. There's a flicker of excitement about tomorrow. There's a deep, tired sigh my body has been holding. In these moments, you are not your thoughts. You are the one who is aware of your thoughts. And in that subtle shift, everything changes. You find freedom. You find choice. You find the authentic melody of your own life, which had been drowned out by the cover bands of worry and busyness. Your inner symphony is the original, unique score of your being. It is rich, complex, and endlessly expressive. Silence is not its enemy, but its essential acoustical chamber. Only in the quiet can its true harmony and its necessary discords be fully heard, understood, and ultimately conducted with wisdom. The subtle internal symphony sounds return, but this time they are more harmonious, flowing together into a brief, beautiful, abstract melody before fading. Voice. Once we become familiar with the music within us, we can hear it in a new way between us. We start to perceive the silent spaces that connect us to others. In our next conversation, we will learn the language of relationships, listening to what is spoken in the spaces between words. Open with the sound of two people breathing softly, slightly out of sync, then coming into rhythm. The faint, comfortable rustle of shared space, a couch creaking, a cup being set down. Underneath, a very low, warm, melodic hum, the sound of connection. Hold for 5 seconds, then let it all fade to a clean, intimate quiet. The voice is softer, more conversational now. Voice. Now let's turn our listening outward, but not to sound, to the space between people. We've journeyed into the quiet of a room and then into the vibrant silence within. But we are not islands. Our most profound joys and sharpest pains are woven in relationship, with partners, family, friends, colleagues. And while we spend a lifetime learning how to speak to one another, we are rarely taught how to listen to the silence that sits between our words. This is the language of relationships. Think of your last meaningful conversation. What do you remember? The words, likely. But what about the pauses? The glance away, the held breath before a difficult truth, the sigh that held an entire story, the comfortable quiet that needed no filling. These are the punctuation marks of human connection, and they often carry the true weight of the message. In a world obsessed with articulation, we have forgotten that the deepest parts of ourselves and of our bonds are often wordless. They reside in the realm of presence, of energy, of shared space. When we learn to listen to this relational silence, we move from communicating to communing. First, consider the pause. Not just any pause, but the loaded one. In a conflict, a pause can be a battleground, a cold, hardening silence of resentment. It says, "I am so far from you right now." But in a moment of shared awe, watching a sunset, hearing profound news, a pause can be a sacred merging. It says, "We are here together in this feeling that is beyond words." The same absence of sound, two entirely different languages. Listening to the quality of a pause tells you everything about the emotional weather between two people. Then, there is the unspoken agreement of shared quiet. This is one of the most underrated signs of intimate connection. It's the silence in a car on a long drive that isn't awkward, but peaceful. It's working side by side with someone, absorbed in separate tasks, buoyed by a mutual unstated contentment. This silence is a testament to security. It says, "I am so comfortable with you, I don't need to perform. I can just be, and your presence is enough." It's a quiet declaration of trust. When you can hear this silence and appreciate it, you nourish the very root of the relationship. But to listen to relational silence, we must tune in to more than our ears. We must listen with our whole being. This is where the symphony of nonverbal cues plays. The language of the body speaks in a silent dialect. A clenched jaw during a calm conversation screams tension. A hand placed gently on an arm during a shared laugh whispers, "I am here with you." The eyes that well up before the voice cracks tell the truth the words are still trying to form. Listening in the quiet means becoming an archaeologist of these subtle signs. It means hearing the story told by a slumped posture, the question asked by a tilted head, the comfort offered in a simple, steady presence. This kind of listening is an act of profound courage and generosity. It requires us to be fully present, to put down our own internal script, our rehearsed response, our judgment, our defense, and to simply receive the other person in their entirety. It's creating a silent, welcoming space for them to exist as they are. The theologian Paul Tillich called this listening love. It is, he said, the first duty of love. And what of the silence that follows the spoken word? The space after a confession, a declaration, a wounding remark. This is the echo chamber of meaning. What we say hangs in the air, and the silence that follows is where it lands in the heart of the other. Do they lean in? Do they pull back? Does their silence absorb your words with warmth, or does it reflect them back, cold and hard? Listening to this echo tells you how your words have been received, often more accurately than any verbal reply. But this language is fragile. It can be drowned out by the noise of our distractions, the phone on the table, the TV in the background, the mental checklist running in our heads. To hear the silent language of a relationship, we must create pockets of dedicated, technology-free, agendaless space. A walk without podcasts, a meal where devices are absent, 10 minutes of simply sitting together, not to problem solve, but to be. In these consciously quiet spaces, the unspoken bond has room to breathe, to be felt, and to speak its truth. Ultimately, listening to the silence in relationships is listening for the connection itself. It's tuning your awareness to the invisible thread that stretches between two souls. Is it taut with tension? Is it strong and elastic, able to withstand distance and disagreement? Is it frayed, in need of gentle repair? When we become fluent in this language, our relationships deepen in unimaginable ways. We realize that sometimes the most powerful thing we can say is nothing at all, that our calm, focused, listening presence can be a healing balm, that by honoring the quiet between us, we honor the sacred, unnameable thing that connects us. We learn that love is not only spoken in ardent vows or clever conversations. It is often spoken loudest in the quiet choice to put down the world's noise, turn toward another human being and simply say, without words, I am here. I am listening. You matter. The sound of a single resonant, gentle chime rings out, its vibrations hanging in the air, blending into the following sound of a light breeze through leaves. Voice. This silent language isn't only human. It is the mother tongue of the world itself. Once we hear it between us, we can begin to hear it everywhere. Our next listening journey awaits in the wild, in nature's unspoken wisdom. Open with a rich, immersive, and detailed soundscape of a forest at dawn. Birdsong is layered, but not overwhelming. A gentle wind rustles leaves. A distant creek trickles. Hold this for 10 full seconds, allowing the complexity to be appreciated. Then, slowly, begin to fade each element out. The birdsong diminishes, the wind settles, the water sound recedes. What remains is a deep, textured, alive quiet, the sound of the earth itself. Into this quiet, the voice returns, hushed and reverent. Voice. Now, let us step outside. Beyond the walls of our minds, beyond the dance of human connection, into the oldest quiet of all. When we silence our own inner and outer noise, an ancient conversation begins to reach our ears. It is not broadcast in words, but transmitted through presence. It is the slow, patient, infinitely intelligent discourse of the living world. This is nature's unspoken wisdom. We often go into nature to escape silence, filling it with playlists and podcasts, or we treat it as a scenic backdrop for our own human dramas. But to truly listen to nature is to engage in a different kind of dialogue. It is to move from being a tourist to becoming a guest. And a good guest knows when to stop talking and listen to the house. First, listen to the silence of scale. Stand under a canopy of ancient trees or before a vast mountain range. In that moment, your personal noise, your worries, your ego, your urgent timelines, is met with a quiet so immense it puts everything into perspective. This silence doesn't diminish you. It recontextualizes you. It whispers of epochs, of glacial patience, of cycles that turn without your effort or consent. Your inner narrative of crisis softens in the throat of this colossal calm. You hear, without a word being spoken. You are part of something vast. Your story is a single thread in a grand tapestry. Breathe. Then, Tune your ear to the language of interbeing. True natural silence is not dead. It is vibrantly, intricately alive. It is the space between sounds that allows each sound its meaning. The crack of a twig is heard because of the quiet floor. The owl's call carries because of the still air. This is a silence of profound relationship. It teaches us about harmony not as sameness, but as perfect differentiation within a unified whole. The root system of a forest communicates through chemical signals in the soil, a wood wide web. The trees are in constant silent conversation about nutrients, danger, and support. When you sit quietly in a grove, you are sitting in the middle of a community speaking a language of mutual care. The wisdom here is clear. Life thrives not in isolation, but in silent, subterranean connection. Now listen for the wisdom of unfolding. In nature, nothing is forced in silence. A bud does not screech open. It unfolds in quiet grace. A river does not argue its path. It persists, whispering around obstacles. A spider spins its web in a focused, wordless ritual. There is no hustle, no anxious productivity for its own sake. There is simply the silent, purposeful expression of being. This is a masterclass in action without striving. It asks us, what in your life is trying to emerge with quiet, inevitable force? What are you trying to shout into existence that might instead unfold if you created a silent, patient space for it? But to hear this, we must surrender our human tempo. This is the practice of deep time listening. We are conditioned to seconds, minutes, hours. Nature operates on the scale of seasons, generations, geological ages. To listen, we must slow our internal metronome to a near standstill. Sit on a rock by the ocean. Watch one wave, then another. Don't count them. Don't Instagram them. Just witness the rhythm that was here 1,000,000 years before you and will be here 1,000,000 years after. In that rhythmic, silent presence, a deep calm arises. The wisdom imparted is one of resilience and release. Each wave arrives with full force and then lets go completely, returning to the source. It is a silent sermon on how to meet the world with full presence, and then how to surrender. This listening also awakens a somatic wisdom, a knowing in the body. In the city, our bodies are clenched, braced against noise and intrusion. In deep natural quiet, the body can finally listen to itself. The breath deepens to match the slow exchange of the trees. The heartbeat steadies. The nervous system, no longer under assault, dials down its alarm. This is not metaphorical, it is physiological. The silence of nature speaks directly to our cells, reminding them of their own ancient biological origin. It says, "You are from this too. This is your first home." The tension you've been carrying is, in part, the homesickness of a creature separated from its habitat. Finally, nature's quiet teaches us about awe as a form of listening. Awe is what happens when we are confronted with something so vast and beautiful that our internal narrative shuts down completely. The mind, for a glorious moment, goes silent. That vacuum of self-concern, a pure, wordless communion takes place. Gazing at the Milky Way, hearing the thunderous silence at the heart of a redwood forest, watching an eagle soar on a thermal, these experiences do not give us information. They give us transformation. They silently rewire us toward humility, curiosity, and a sense of sacred belonging. So, go outside. But go with the intention not to hike, or to achieve, or to capture. Go to attend. Sit. Let the human sounds fade into the background. Ask, what is this place saying? Feel the sun's silent instruction on your skin. Hear the wind's gentle negotiation with the leaves. Smell the rain's promise on the air. Become a receptor for the intelligence that flows through all things. In nature's unspoken wisdom, we find a mirror for our own deepest sanity. We are reminded that we are not separate observers, but participatory notes in a silent, magnificent symphony. And in listening to its quiet, we remember how to hear the truth of our own being. which is forever wild, forever patient, and forever connected to the whole. The natural soundscape returns, but now the listener's ear is tuned to the spaces between the sounds. A profound, peaceful quiet underlies it all. It holds for a long moment. Voice. Yet we cannot live perpetually on the mountain or in the forest. We must return to the human world, with its demands and fractures, but we can carry a piece of that natural quiet within us as a sanctuary. Our next exploration is into building that inner refuge, silence as a sanctuary. Open with a sudden jarring burst of chaotic noise, a cacophony of city traffic, overlapping conversations, phone alerts, blaring horns. It's overwhelming. Hold this for 5 seconds, then begin to apply a subtle filtering effect, as if noise-canceling headphones are being put on. The chaos muffles, fades, and is replaced by a soft, protective, enveloping sphere of quiet. A palpable, peaceful hum. The voice begins, calm and assured, from within this sanctuary. Voice. There will be days when the world does not simply buzz but shrieks. When the demands are a torrent, the news is a blade, and the inner symphony we've cultivated feels drowned out by a cacophony of must and should and now. In such moments, seeking external quiet may be impossible. The construction outside your window won't stop. The crisis at work won't pause. The churn of global anxiety won't cease on your behalf. This is when the theoretical understanding of silence must become a practical, portable fortress. This is when we learn to build silence as a sanctuary. A sanctuary is not a permanent escape. It is a temporary, inviolable refuge, a place where you remember who you are when you are not defined by the emergency. It is a space you carry within you, that you can retreat to at will, even amidst the storm. This internal sanctuary is not built of stone and mortar, but of intention and attention. The first step is the conscious architecture of an inner cloister. You must design it in your mind's eye. What does your sanctuary feel like? For some, it is a small, sun-dappled forest glade. For others, a silent stone chapel, a deserted beach at dawn, a cozy, firelit room with a single, comfortable chair. It can be a memory of a perfectly peaceful place or a pure imagination. The key is detail. Feel the texture of the air there. Is it cool and still, or warm and breezy? See the quality of the light. This mental blueprint is the foundation. It gives your mind a specific, peaceful address to return to. But a beautiful room is useless if you cannot find the door. The door is the anchor of breath. Breath is the one constant rhythm that bridges your inner and outer worlds, the autonomic function you can consciously steer. In chaos, your breath becomes shallow, tight, high in the chest, a mirror of panic. To enter the sanctuary, you must change the key. A deep, diaphragmatic breath is the threshold. Inhale slowly for a count of 4, imagining crossing the sanctuary's threshold. Hold for a moment, feeling the safe space around you. Exhale slowly for a count of 6, releasing the world's chaos at the door. This is not just relaxation. It is a physiological command to your nervous system. Switch from fight or flight to rest and digest. You are safe now. Once inside, you must cultivate the silence of sensory grounding. The outer world intrudes through our senses. So, within your sanctuary, you deliberately engage them with quiet, soothing inputs. This is the practice of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 things you can see in your mind's eye within your sanctuary. The grain of the wood, the pattern of leaves. 4 things you can physically feel right now. The solid floor under your feet, the soft fabric of your shirt. 3 things you can hear in the ambient quiet you've created. The hum of silence itself, your own steady breath. 2 things you can smell, perhaps the imagined scent of pine or rain, or the real, neutral scent of the air around you. 1 thing you can taste, a sip of water, the clean taste of your own mouth. This exercise forcibly evicts the chaotic sensory data of the outside world and replaces it with curated, peaceful input. It builds the walls of your refuge. Here, in your inner cloister, you will face the most common intruder, the uninvited thought. A worry about a deadline will bang on the door. A replay of an argument will try to climb in through the window. This is normal. The sanctuary is not a vacuum. The practice is not to wrestle with these thoughts, nor to shame yourself for having them. It is to acknowledge them as visitors at the gate, and gently, firmly, not let them in. You might picture placing the worry on a leaf in your forest glade and watching a stream carry it away. You might imagine writing the thought on a piece of paper in your chapel and placing it in a box to be dealt with later. You say silently, "Not now. This is my time for peace." This is the discipline of sanctuary keeping. The profound power of this practice is that it creates a buffer of being. Between the external stimulus, the stressful email, the angry voice, and your reactive self, the clenched fist, the sharp retort, the spiral of anxiety, you insert this sacred space. In that buffer, you find choice. You are no longer a puppet jerked by the strings of circumstance. You are a being who can retreat, recalibrate, and respond from a place of centered clarity, rather than react from a place of frantic survival. The sanctuary becomes the gap between the lightning strike of event and the thunderclap of your response. This is not a one-time construction. It is a daily renovation. You visit your sanctuary not only when you are at breaking point, but as a daily ritual, for 5 minutes in the morning, for 60 seconds between meetings. You strengthen the neural pathways to peace so that in crisis, the path is well worn and easy to find. The ultimate wisdom of the inner sanctuary is this: you are not your circumstances. You are the silent, spacious awareness that can witness those circumstances from a place of profound safety. The world can shake, and within you, there can be a still point, unmoved. This is not denial. It is the deepest form of resilience. It is the understanding that while you cannot always control the noise of the world, you hold sovereign authority over the quality of your inner silence. So, build your sanctuary today. Brick by mindful brick. Breath by steady breath. Visit it often. Let it be the non-negotiable inner room where you remember your wholeness, where you listen not to the chaos, but to the quiet, constant truth of your own presence. It is your birthright, your fortress, your peace. The protective, spherical hum of the sanctuary quiet becomes a little clearer, a gentle, resonant tone that feels both interior and expansive. It holds voice. Yet a sanctuary can sometimes become a hiding place. True courage is found not only in retreating to silence, but in allowing that silence to reveal what we've been avoiding. This brings us to our most challenging listen: the courage of contemplation. Open with the clean, safe, spherical hum from the end of point 5. It is comforting. Then slowly, this protective sound begins to thin, to dissipate, like a mist clearing. What is left is not the safe hum, nor a natural soundscape, but a pure, empty, resonant silence. It feels vast and slightly exposing. The voice returns, measured and honest, with a tone of respectful gravity. Voice. A sanctuary is vital. But if we only ever use silence as a retreat, we risk making it a hiding place, a room to which we flee from everything we fear, including ourselves. There comes a moment when we must turn within not for comfort, but for truth. Not to buffer the world, but to meet what the world has helped us avoid. This is the most demanding form of listening. It requires valor. This is the courage of contemplation. Contemplative silence is not relaxation. It is investigation. It is the deliberate, unflinching act of sitting in the ultimate quiet, the quiet of your own being, stripped of distraction, entertainment, and even routine comfort, and asking the only question that ultimately matters: who am I when I am not doing, achieving, or reacting? This is where silence stops being a soft blanket and becomes a clear mirror. And in that mirror, we do not always like what we see. The first thing the mirror reveals is the illusion of the busy self. In the noise of life, we are defined by our actions, our roles, our resumes. I am a writer, a partner, a problem solver, a worrier, a planner. But in the profound stillness of contemplation, activity ceases. The roles fall away like costumes. What remains? A collection of habits, perhaps, a thicket of conditioned thoughts, a familiar ache or longing. It can feel frighteningly empty. This is the ego's terror, the fear that without its constant narration and activity, it simply isn't. Contemplative courage is the willingness to face that potential emptiness, not as a void, but as a field of pure potentiality. It is listening for the foundational hum of your own consciousness. Prior to all story, then, the mirror shows us the unintegrated shadow. In the busy daylight of our lives, we can outrun our less admirable parts, our petty jealousies, our unspoken resentments, our hidden fears, our capacity for coldness or cowardice. But in the utter quiet, they catch up. They sit down beside us, they whisper. This is not a sign of failure, it is a sign of profound honesty. The silence doesn't create these shadows, it illuminates them. The courage lies in not turning on the noise to drown them out, but in listening to what they have to say. That resentment may be pointing to a trampled boundary. That fear may be guarding an old wound that needs acknowledgement. To listen to the shadow in silence is not to become it, but to understand it. And in understanding, to reclaim the energy it has been using to hide. This process is an excavation. Think of yourself as an archaeological dig. The top layer is the daily noise. Beneath it, the layer of current thoughts and feelings. Go deeper, and you hit the strata of personal history, childhood experiences, formative hurts, embedded beliefs. In contemplative silence, you gently brush the dust away from these artifacts. You might hear the faint echo of a voice long gone. You're not good enough. You might feel the shape of an old sorrow you've been carrying like a stone in your pocket. This is not idle reminiscing. It is sacred, surgical work. It is listening to the past not to relive it, but to release its unconscious hold on your present. Inevitably, this excavation leads to the questions without answers. In the quiet, the big existential themes rise like slow bubbles from the deep. What is my purpose? What do I truly believe? Am I living a life that matters? What is my relationship with mortality? In the marketplace of the world, we borrow cheap, ready-made answers from culture, family, or ideology. But in the silent chapel of contemplation, those borrowed answers ring hollow. Here, you must forge your own. This is terrifyingly liberating. It requires you to sit in the not knowing, to tolerate the ambiguity, to listen for an authentic response that may come not as a shouted decree, but as a subtle, growing conviction in your bones. This is the silence that shapes a philosophy, that forges a soul. Why would anyone volunteer for such an arduous journey? Because on the other side of this courage lies the liberation of authenticity. To have faced the illusions, acknowledged the shadow, examined the relics of your past, and sat with the great questions, is to be stripped of pretense. What emerges is not a perfect self, but a true one, a self that is no longer at war with its own silence, a self whose actions begin to align with a deeply listened to inner truth, not with external noise or expectation. This is the birthplace of genuine integrity. It is how we move from being an echo of the world to speaking with our own original voice. This courage is not a one-time event. It is a daily practice of brave, silent attendance. It might be 20 minutes of meditation where you simply watch the chaos of your mind without judgment. It might be a long, device-free walk where you invite the difficult questions to surface. It might be sitting with a journal, writing the prompt. What am I afraid to hear in the quiet? It is the hardest work you will ever do, and the most rewarding. For in that silent contemplation, you are not just listening to yourself. You are participating in the ancient human project of knowing thyself. And in that knowing, you find an unshakable foundation. The storms of life may rage, but you have met the depths of your own being, and you are no longer afraid of the quiet at the center. The vast, empty silence returns for a long moment. Then, a single, clear, resonant note is struck, like a bell or a singing bowl. It vibrates in the space, clean and unambiguous before fading. Voice. Having found that foundational truth in the quiet, one final task remains. We must learn to weave these threads, the listening, the sanctuary, the courage, into the very fabric of our daily lives. Our final exploration is the art of crafting a life of deep listening. Open with the sound of gentle, purposeful hands-on activity, the rhythmic scraping of a handplane on wood, the soft brush of a paintbrush on canvas, or the methodical sound of knitting needles. This is not a frantic sound, but a measured, present, almost meditative action. Underneath, weave in the faintest echoes of all the previous soundscapes, a whisper of the forest, a fragment of the sanctuary's hum, a breath of shared quiet. Hold this tapestry of sound for a moment, then let the activity sounds fade, leaving only the blended echoes which then dissolve into a clean, present silence. The voice returns, warm, conclusive, and empowered. Voice. We have journeyed far. We've defined silence, listened inward, tuned to relationships, heard nature's wisdom, built sanctuaries, and faced the mirror of contemplation. Now, we arrive at the most practical and perhaps most important question. How does this become not just an episode, but the ethos of a life? How do we move from practicing deep listening to crafting a life of deep listening? This is not about adding another item to your to-do list. Achieve enlightenment. It is the gentle, persistent art of weaving threads of quiet awareness into the very fabric of your ordinary days. It is the shift from seeing silence as a destination you visit to recognizing it as the very ground you walk upon. It begins with the radical acceptance of micro-moments. We often believe we need a week-long retreat, a soundproof room, an hour of pristine meditation to really listen. And while those are beautiful, life is lived in the in-between. The true craft lies in sanctifying the gaps. The 30 seconds waiting for the kettle to boil, where you choose to stand in stillness, feeling your feet on the floor instead of reaching for your phone. The minute in your car after you park, where you let the engine's silence settle before you rush into the next thing. The pause at the top of the stairs, taking one conscious breath. These are not wasted moments. They are the stitches that sew a life of reactivity into a tapestry of response. In each micro moment of chosen quiet, you reaffirm your sovereignty over your own attention. From these moments, we build rituals of reclamation. These are the non-negotiable, daily appointments with silence that structure a listening life. The first might be the silent morning. Just 5 minutes, before the screen lights up, before the day's script is read, to sit with a cup of tea and simply be, to listen to the dawn, both outside and within. Another could be the threshold pause. Every time you move from one environment to another, home to work, work to errands, outside to inside, you institute a 3-breath ritual at the door. Inhale, leaving the energy of the last space behind. Exhale, crossing the threshold present. Inhale, arriving fully in the new space. This ritual cleanses the auditory and emotional palate. But a listening life is not just about solitude. It extends into communicative integrity. This is applying the language of relational silence to how you engage. It means practicing the pause before you speak in a meeting, creating space for a more thoughtful contribution to emerge. It means, in conversation, fighting the urge to formulate your response while the other person is still talking, and instead, listening so completely that your reply arises from the shared space between you, not just from your preconceived mind. It means having the courage to sometimes say, "I need a moment of quiet to think about that," rather than giving a rushed, shallow answer. Your environment must become an echo of your intent. Crafting a life of deep listening means curating your physical and digital soundscape. It means auditing the noise you allow in, the automatic news plays, the background TV, the endless scroll through noisy social media. It involves creating zones of quiet in your home, a chair by a window, a corner with no devices, that act as visual and energetic invitations to pause. It means using technology with intention, not on default. Putting your phone on Do Not Disturb, not as an occasional act, but as a standard of living, allowing sounds and notifications to be received by you at a time of your choosing, not as demands that interrupt your inner symphony. At its heart, this craft is about cultivating the listener's identity. This is the deepest work. You begin to narrate your own life differently. Instead of, "I am someone who is busy and stressed," you practice the story. "I am someone who values and cultivates inner quiet." Instead of, "I have no time for silence," you say, "I protect time for listening because it is the source of my clarity and peace." This identity shift is powerful. It transforms actions from being difficult disciplines into natural expressions of who you are. You start to make choices from this identity, choosing the quieter route for a walk, leaving a party early to honor your need for replenishment, opting for an evening of reading over more screen noise, not as deprivation, but as affirmation of your true self. Inevitably, you will forget. The world will pull you back into its frantic rhythm. The craft, then, includes the practice of compassionate return. You will go days without a true moment of quiet. The inner chatter will feel overwhelming again. This is not failure. This is the human experience. The skill is in the gentle, non-judgmental return. No scolding, no drama. Simply noticing, "Ah, I have been away from my own silence." And then, performing the simplest, kindest act, taking the next single conscious breath. The return is the practice. A life of deep listening is a life lived in authentic response to the world, not in frantic reaction to it. It is a life where decisions arise from a well of clarity, not a swamp of anxiety, where relationships are built on the solid ground of true presence, where creativity is sourced from the deep aquifer of the unconscious, not the sprinkler of forced production. It is a life that can hold both profound joy and deep sorrow with equal grace, because in the silent center, you have met yourself, and you are not afraid. So start your loom today. Take the thread of a single silent breath. Weave it with the thread of a protected morning moment. Interlace it with the thread of a fully listened-to conversation. Keep weaving. The pattern that emerges will be the unique, beautiful, and resilient masterpiece of a life that truly heard, and therefore truly lived. The opening activity sound returns, the plane on wood, the paintbrush, the knitting needles. But now it is smoother, more confident, rhythmic. It blends with a slow, warm, melodic conclusion that feels both complete and ongoing. This continues for a few seconds, then the activity sound fades, leaving only the concluding music. Voice. We began by asking what you could hear in the quiet. We end with the understanding that in the quiet, you can hear everything that matters. You can hear your life. Thank you for listening.